Welcome to What I Know Now. I'm your host, Mark Kelly. What I Know Now is a leadership personal development podcast where I interview people from all walks of life. To hear their story and to share their challenges and what they overcome, I try to share their hindsight with you. Today's guest is Sinead Kane. Sinead is a keynote speaker, visually impaired athlete, record holder, brand ambassador and qualified solicitor. In January 2017, Sinead made history as she became the first visually impaired athlete to complete the World Marathon Challenge. Sinead gives a frank overview about some of the challenges she's faced, but how it's actually fueled her fire to do incredible things. Over to yourself, Sinead. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey? And firstly, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Mark, for having me on this podcast. Like you said, I'm visually impaired, so I was born with a disability. I have only 5% vision. I can see about 3 feet ahead of me. I mostly see colours and shapes rather than detail. And I have 4 eye conditions: aniridia, coloboma, nystagmus and glaucoma. Aniridia is where you take in too much light. Coloboma is a part missing of the eye. The part missing of my eye is my iris. So I don't have a colour of my eye, so I don't have the blue, the brown or the green. So my eyes are black. Nystagmus is shaking of the eyes, and glaucoma is too much pressure in the eyes. So a lot of the time I would suffer maybe from sore eyes. I'm very, very sensitive to light. I don't like my picture being taken, especially with the flash. And bright sunny days are quite difficult for me. I can go temporarily blind for a few seconds, like completely blind for a few seconds, if I go from a shaded environment to a bright environment and vice versa. I think a lot of people, when you talk to them about disability, they think to themselves, oh, that doesn't affect me because I don't have a disability. I don't know anybody who has a disability. But I think people need to be aware that you can develop a disability throughout your life. You can acquire a disability. I know a lot of people who were born fully sighted and who have acquired blindness through accident, through illness. So it is something that can affect you.
Can you give a little bit of an overview about your earlier life?
When I went to school, in primary school, I was the only girl in a school of 450 people, and I was the only person with the disability, and that was quite tough because we live in a world where you're taught to be different, but yet when you're in primary school and secondary school, everybody wants to be the same as everybody else. And so for me, other children started bullying me, and I suppose that had an effect on me that I didn't want to go to school then, and I suppose I just used negative coping mechanisms to not go to school, and then that resulted in me being quite sick, and trying to bounce back from that type of adversity was difficult. And that's why I feel in life you need to be very mentally, physically and spiritually energized. You really need to have a lot of energy to bounce back from your goals, and sometimes you need other people to help you with that energy if you don't have it at the time yourself. But the other lesson I've learned from life is you need to be aware of energy vampires, people who can take your energy, toxic people. So the people who were bullying me were energy vampires. They were taking away my power, they were taking away my energy.
You used a quote recently when you were on Ryan Tuberty, and you said it was like a shark. It was like a shark in the background, that you knew it was there, bullying, but it wasn't always obvious it was happening.
With the bullying, it was difficult because, like, even now I can fully relive the flashbacks of how the girls used to be punching me and how I used to be ending up with a load of bruises, and how people actually thought that that was from me being visually impaired and accident prone. And at the time I was quite negative, and that was a challenge. I think that our mind is the greatest gift, and that not a lot of people invest in their mind, and they don't actually really see the power of the mind.
You've every reason to say, well, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, it's safer to go this route, safer to go that. What made you turn that around and say, well, this is what I'm going to do, and actually I'm going to go and start breaking some records?
Well, I can choose to be blind or I can choose to be visionary. I couldn't choose how I was born, but I can choose how I live my life. And I choose to live my life in a positive way, and I choose to try and be the best version of myself and to be better tomorrow than what I was today. And I also, the best piece of advice I got was from my careers advisor teacher. And I suppose the reason why that was the best piece of advice was because when I told her that I wanted to study law, she told me that I couldn't do it. And I knew in my head that I could do it. And so I went on and I did prove her wrong. And I showed that I knew that I could do it and I was able to do it. And if people tell me I can't do something, I analyse it in my head and I say to myself, well, yes, I can do it.
You mentioned about your career advisor. You also tell a story about how you went over to the UK and met a blind judge. Would you mind sharing that story?
I think that we all need role models in life to get to where we're going, and sometimes our role models is so far away from us on the ladder that that's what makes us stop from motivating on to achieve our goals, because our role models is so high up on the ladder that no matter how much work and energy you put in, you're not getting closer to that role model. It's taking forever. So that's why I kind of see my role models maybe 2 or 3 steps above me, and then as you put in the hard work, then you get closer and closer to that person. So when I was in second year in UCC, I wanted to give up because it was a very difficult journey, as in all the time using a magnifying glass to read law books, all the time having pains in my back, pains in my eyes, pains in my wrist from holding magnifying glass and having to spread out my reading and to make sacrifices, because that is what I've learned from life. If you want to achieve your goals, you have to make sacrifices, and making the sacrifices of not going out and all of that, and it was just too difficult for me, and I decided to give up. And I needed to build up the courage to tell the people around me that I loved that I was going to be giving up. And I told them, and then they said, my parents said, oh, well, we'll bring you to London for a shopping trip. And I said to myself, oh, I should have decided to give up sooner. And then we went to London. We didn't go to the shopping trip. We went to Chancery Lane to meet this judge who was totally blind. And I talked to him about everything else other than law. And he gave me the confidence. I was saying to myself, well, if he can do it, then I can do it. And I didn't have role models in my life, in society, to aspire to that, because I don't come from a legal background family. There's nobody in my
There's
family.
No generations from it, no dynasty of that regard.
No, so I came back to Ireland full of confidence, and then qualified as a solicitor, and I thought that life owed me then, because I felt, right, I've put in the hard work, I should now get a job. I've done everything that I'm meant to do, and a job didn't fall into my lap. I tried desperately to get a job, but every time the employer saw the WIKN, it shouldn't happen. And some people might think, oh, sure, that wouldn't happen in this day and age in 2017, that you'd be discriminated in that type of way. But it does happen. And I had to think creatively and be adaptive in trying to get a job as a solicitor. So I applied for a voluntary internship, because that's how badly I wanted my goal. You need to ask yourself, what is your reason why to get back up when the chips are down? Because when the chips are down, it's quite difficult. It's very easy to be positive and happy when everything's going your way. But when the chips are down, that really distinguishes the resilient type of people. And
is this the internship that you got in Dublin?
Yes, where I got up every morning at 4 a.m, got a 5 o'clock train from Cork to Dublin, got to Dublin at 8 o'clock, got a bus out to Ballsbridge, out there for 8:30, started work about 9, finished about 5:30, then back into the Houston train station, got a train back to Cork at 7 o'clock, was back to Cork at 10 o'clock, didn't get home until about 10:30, got to bed about 10:45 and back up the following morning at 4, and did that for 6 months. And Monday to Friday, yeah. And I was very tired and cranky and continuously questioning myself, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And in those moments, you really need to know your why, and your why has to be very, very strong. And when life has you up against a rope and you're saying to yourself, I have no reason why, you need to be able to call on it.
What did you do on the train while you were in transit? Was it reading?
Well, I can't sleep on trains or buses or planes, so like I would have loved to be able to say the minute I got on the train I was asleep, but no, that didn't happen. So I suppose I listened to music, and I listened to the words of the songs, and I tried to take meaning from songs, and I listened to podcasts, and I just tried to learn, because for me, to learn more is to earn more. Okay. And I got that saying from a very good friend of mine, John O'Regan, so my guide runner.
Yeah, John would have, he's been all around the world. He's worked with yourself and Mark Pollock doing that as well. Actually, on that relationship, how important is that confidence working with him day to day when you're actually running?
I think there has to be a very big trust between one another, and very big communication skills. So communication and trust is the major issues there, and teamwork. And to make the dream work, you have to have teamwork, and I think that applies to business. You need the right people doing the job, and to get a guide runner, it's not just get any old guide runner. The person has to be able to communicate well, they have to be patient, because for example with me, when I'm running, a lot of frustration is building up inside me, because with other runners, they look to another runner and they see that that person is struggling, and they get energy subconsciously from seeing that person struggling. Or they look at an object and they focus on that object, and that brings them another 400 meters, whereas I have nothing to distract me. I can't use music to distract me because I have to listen to the guide runner. So other people have a lot of distractions, whether it's focusing on signs, focusing on other runners, focusing on music. I don't have any of that. So that's all frustration building up inside me like a pressure cooker. And the only way then I have to release that is I normally release it by taking it out on the guide runner. So if he says, oh, up, down, left, right, I might say, oh, well, you never said that fast enough, and I take out the anger on him, but it's not directed at him, it's just me releasing my frustration, and he realises that now, you see. Okay. And so that's why you have to be patient type of person. He kind of lets me get that out, and then I'm kind of back into the rhythm of the site or the running again. Okay.
So it kind of changed topic there, but when you finish your internship and then you obviously you've qualified, how did you find trying to get employment then? Because you're the first
visually impaired solicitor in Ireland.
So
that was 2009.
Another milestone.
Yeah.
But how have you found gaining employment?
Well, at the moment I'm currently doing a PhD full time on a teacher's duty of care inside and outside a school. After I qualified, I believe a lot. I was trying to get a job back in 2009, and as I say, it wasn't happening for me. And then I started working with the LRC, and then I was working with the Department of Public Expenditure for a while, and then I got a job as a solicitor. But at the same time as getting that job, then I got offered the chance to do this PhD, and I had to choose then which was I more passionate about. And I suppose I'm passionate about the topic of bullying and changing that to help others, and I'm also passionate about serving others in society and doing a lot of voluntary work. So I decided that I would forego the job as a solicitor and do the PhD and do voluntary work. I'm a director of Able Vision Ireland. I do a lot of work with the Irish Guide Dogs. I do a lot of work with NCBI, and and like even at the end of this month I'm doing a marathon there in Limerick in association with Cleana's Foundation. I did 7 years voluntary work with Childline. I've worked with Child Vision. So for me, it is about a lot giving back to society.
Can you give me a little bit of an overview about what it was like to do 7 marathons in 7 continents in 7 days? And take into consideration, listeners, Sinead only started to run at the age of 30, ran her first marathon at 32. And by 34, you're running with endurance athletes where would be regarded as kind of the cream of the crop, and you're flying thousands of miles around the world to go to 7 continents. Do you start off in Antarctica?
Mm-hmm. Well, with the World Marathon Challenge, there was 300 kilometres done of running over the 7 days. There was 15 different time zones passed through, and there was also 45,000 kilometres of flight distance travelled. So they're just some statistics.
Wow.
And for me, everybody says, oh, how difficult was the World Marathon Challenge? And yes, it was very difficult. My feet were so badly swollen that you couldn't feel the bones.
I saw pictures of them.
Yeah, you couldn't feel the bones in my feet. You could hear the fluid swishing around in my feet. And this actually is the very annoying part, that I got so many bad blisters, like really, really bad. My feet really, really swelled. And then my teammate, John, who's my guide runner, nothing happened to his feet.
Wow.
His feet were absolutely perfect. No swelling, no blisters. I think I was actually taking it on all for the two of us. So I decided, if this was a team event and if he wasn't getting any blisters or anything like that, or no swelling of feet, I decided that on the plane, when he was all the time sleeping and when I couldn't get asleep, that if it was a team event, then both teammates needed to be awake at all times. So while he was sleeping, I would always wake him up. So
you're a brave woman doing that.
Yeah. But like, when everybody asks me this question, oh, it must have been really extremely difficult, and how did you do it, and all this. Like, for me, the World Marathon Challenge wasn't that difficult. It was difficult, but my biggest difficulty is my disability and everyday life. That's my biggest challenge.
You did have a bit of a challenge, though, when I read in Sydney.
50, on the 50 actually.
In Sydney, you said you were kind of struggling.
There was difficulties all throughout it. First day we went to Antarctica, and in Antarctica, one of the challenges would have been that in the second half of the race, the weather got really, really bad, and they didn't think that the plane was going to be able to land because the weather was just so bad. It was about -30, and they don't turn off the engine on the planes out in Antarctica because they'd be afraid that they can't turn them back on.
Wow.
So because the weather was so bad, they were saying that, oh, the plane wasn't actually going to come for us. So it was on the way, but that it was going to turn around and come back on a different day. So if that had been the case, then we would have to do the Antarctic Marathon again to start from to get the times to start from the next day. Because if you started from that day, then you'd be outside the 7-day period, you see. And I just thought to myself, I cannot do a -30 degree marathon again, because I was wearing wool socks, very sensitive feet. Hasn't happened to me before, where 6 miles into the race got hot spots on my feet from the wool socks, and I had to stop for 20 minutes to get my feet taped up because there was a load of blisters, because I thought that, oh, normally you get blisters from heat. I thought being in -30 degrees, I wouldn't get any, I'd be more worried about frostbite on my feet. But anyway, I ended up getting blisters. That just shows how sensitive my feet are. So
I saw some of the photos.
Yeah, so that was on the first day. So that kind of hampered my ability then for the rest of the week. So they were the kind of difficulties in Antarctica. Also, because everybody thinks of blindness as in darkness. As I said earlier, my problem is too much light. So out in Antarctica then, there was 24 hours of light. So 24 hours of brightness. So even at 11 o'clock at night, you had the sun shining. So with the glare of the sky reflecting against the glare of the snow on the ground, for me, because I take in too much light, it's like a lot of snow blindness that I experience all the time, as opposed to darkness. So that was a difficulty. And then on day 5, then the landscape, the course didn't suit me as a visually impaired runner, because it was a section 900 metres of all these lovely planted trees directly in the centre of the foot pavement, and it meant that I couldn't run side by side with my guide runner.
Wow.
And so we had to walk in single file for safety, and that was very difficult for me mentally, knowing that, because it was a 13 lapped course, so you had to go around that 900 metres stretch for 13 times. So it wasn't just one long 26 miles.
Because even walking in here, you asked me to walk ahead of you.
Yeah.
So you could
follow your footsteps. Yeah.
So I can't imagine what that would be like if you had to take the lead, not necessarily knowing.
Yeah, well, there in that situation, what I did with John was I went behind him, but we just had to walk, and that was very mentally difficult, because I was doing the World Marathon Challenge to prove to people that my disability doesn't hold me back, whereas that race was holding me back, and I had to accept that my disability in that race was holding me back. And so I got very frustrated, very annoyed, and then I just had, because of all my frustration and anger, I was getting annoyed with John, and then we had a big fight, and I fired him, and I told him, when we get back to Dublin, delete my number, erase my number, never again want to see you, and all of this. And we got back on track anyway, and the rest of the run was quite silent. And for me, that was a very, very difficult run, because I knew that I was dropping race position because of my disability, and I found that very difficult to accept. And then though the following day in Dubai, 34 degrees heat, we were on a boardwalk at the beach, there was no obstacles, and that just shows when there's no obstacles there, I'm able to shine. My disability doesn't hold me back, because in that race I came joint first with an elite Chilean runner. Right. And it just shows that when there's no obstacles there, that people with disabilities can shine, their potential can shine. And for me, that's what motivates me to get up out of bed every morning.
From reading about yourself, you mentioned around the age of 17 you had a kind of a moment where you said, right, this is how I'm going to kick on my life, this is what I'm going to do. Is there any particular kind of tipping point where you said, right, this is the life I'm going to live?
I think, when I was around 17, that I knew then that my purpose was to inspire people, and because I do see myself in a senior leadership position in this country. In a few years' time, I know that I will be. And it actually does scare me, because I know that if I put in the hard work, that it will happen. And your goals need to scare you. You need to be afraid of your goals, because if you're not afraid of your goals, then your goals aren't big enough. And if it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you. And I'm afraid of this goal of being in the senior leadership position, but I know it'll happen if I put the hard work in. And so everything I do now is a springboard to getting there.
Is that politics? Is that in the private sector? Where do you see that?
At the moment, a lot of people joke with me when they say about, oh, I hear you want to be President of Ireland. And I kind of say to them, don't see it fully as a joke, because I'm serious about that.
Several people talked about that at the event. Like, that was the conversation, and I've told, that I overheard a few times.
And if it's not that, then it'll be somewhere either in politics or somewhere in the legal profession. I want to be in a position where I can make a difference, and I'm making a difference. I don't think that you have to be in a senior leadership position to make a difference. Anybody in society can make a difference, but I'm very much about challenging the status quo, and I don't really see many people with disabilities up there having the power, because it's only through being up there and challenging the status quo that more acceptance and inclusion of difference will happen.
Is there anything that you would go back in your life and have a coffee with your younger self and say, this is what I know now that I wish I knew before?
Well, I'd tell my younger self 3 very important things. That pain is temporary, that there's always somebody worse off than you. That's the second thing. And the third thing is that the feeling of giving up is going to last much longer than the feeling of failure. So I would prefer to try and fail than to just give up. For me, like if I had to meet either my younger self or my older self, whether it's an 18-year-old or 80-year-old, I think I would pick the 80-year-old rather than the younger self. And the reason why I say that is because I think the greatest lesson in life is life experience.
Okay.
But if I was to meet my 18-year-old self, I would be telling the person a load of advice and what's going to happen and preparing that person. But then you're not allowing that person prepare or experience life.
Yeah.
And it's through experiencing life of pain, suffering, and learning life lessons and learning failure and learning rejection. I get so much rejection on a daily basis, and so much trying to navigate around with my disability and people not understanding, and that really helps you build your psychological capital to be resilient.
Yeah.
Like for me, that's why the World Marathon Challenge was nearly easy. There was difficulties in it, but it was easy in the sense that my biggest challenge is living with my disability on a daily basis, navigating around. If you can imagine having your eyes closed, and what do you do the first thing when you get up in the morning? You look at your phone, you look out the window to see whether it's raining. If I want to know if it's raining, I have to go outside. I can't just look out the window.
Yeah.
I actually have to physically go outside. Okay. If I want to make a cup of tea, there's a hazard there with the boiled water, about pouring boiled water over myself. That has happened many a time. In Cork and in Dublin, the landscape is always changing. There's always roadworks going on. Navigating around that is always difficult.
Of course.
Trying to do that. And so maybe people think that the World Marathon Challenge is such an extraordinary achievement. It is, but try live with a disability from birth to now, and it's quite difficult.
You really kick people who haven't got a disability, who choose not to live an extraordinary life, because you really kind of set it out, and you're very honest in everything you say.
Well, I've no time for a person who's sitting around saying, oh, I can't do a 5k run, and they're fully sighted. And yet I'm only 5% vision. I'm out there trying, getting up every morning, 4 a.m. for 6 months when I was with the LRC, and out there putting that effort in. And I watch a lot of teenagers there, and maybe their biggest obstacle in life at the moment is taking the wrong selfie.
Right.
And I think we live in a world where everybody is so, even adults now, they're so distracted by their phones.
Yeah.
People are walking along the street and they're choosing not to look where they're going because they're so engrossed in their phone, and yet they're not having respect for other people who walk along the street with the WIKN.
You say an interesting quote, I'll say it for you. I'm 95% deficit in my vision, but I know where I'm going.
Yeah, like I'm always working backwards. I have another goal that I see for when I'm in my 50s, and I'm working back from that. So like, as well as that, a lot of people keep asking me, oh, what's my next goal? And I think what they fail to realise, say something like the World Marathon Challenge requires a lot of hard work, a lot of training. It just doesn't happen. And the other thing is you have to get sponsorship. So okay. I am in training at the moment, and I think it's better to be prepared for an opportunity and not have one than to have an opportunity and not be prepared.
Okay.
So I'm preparing myself for when opportunities come along, I'm ready.
You're ready to go. Yeah, which is a brilliant place to be as well. Well, Sinead, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks very much for having me, and hopefully people have got something from the podcast.
I definitely think they will. Hope you enjoyed our remarkable interview with Sinead Kane. You can subscribe to the podcast via iTunes or your podcast of choice. Just enter WIKN. I hope you have a great week. By the end of this conversation, I hope you're going to take massive action. See you soon. Bye.